YouTube channel. Welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if you're new. It's lovely to have you here. My name is Onase and I am Nigerian. I currently live in London. In today's video, I will be sharing my culture shock moments from when I first moved to the UK, and there will be some funny stories as well. So if you would like to hear more about this, then keep watching. By way of background, I moved to the UK about 3 years ago, and that was my first time visiting the UK. Was when I first moved, and I had some very funny culture shock moments. First one is just, I think my biggest shock was seeing how long people walk for. So the very long periods of time that people would walk around in the UK just to get from one location to another. And then I remember the first time that I experienced this personally. So like my uni was really close to my accommodation, so I wouldn't walk more than 5 minutes or 7 minutes max to get to class. But then I was doing that every day and I sort of got used to it, although I used to be late sometimes. And disclaimer, that is not an indication of my time management skills. So anyway, the time I walked for a really long distance the very first time was during the first week when I had moved to the UK. So I wanted to go to the shopping mall by myself, and I thought I would take the bus so I can get to see the routes, know the routes a bit better. And so I took a bus from opposite my university at the time, where I was living in Leicester, where I was studying in Leicester. And I just entered the bus, and I asked which bus goes to city centre, and they told me that one, and the bus will come from here, this is the bus stop, it will take you and stop at city centre. So I literally just entered the bus, and then I went to city centre, I went to the shopping mall. Then it was time to come back home. I did not know my way, so I didn't know which bus stop I would stop at or which bus to take that would take me to the front of my university. And then there were lots of bus routes and things like that, and it was just a lot of information and I was feeling overwhelmed. So I stopped and I asked a lady which bus will take me to University of Leicester, which is the fastest bus. And then she told me to take the one she was taking and stop at a place called Nelson Mandela Park. And I assumed that would be really close to my uni, because my uni was really close to my student accommodation. So I entered the bus and we stop at Nelson Mandela Park, and she's like, oh yeah, this is Nelson Mandela. And so I get down, and then I had shopping bags. So it was time to walk to my accommodation, and where I was standing, I did not see any place that looked familiar. So I was like, oh my days, what's going to happen now? And then I brought out my Google Maps, which is really terrible for walking distances. I think it's better when you drive. And I started walking, and it was late in the evening. So I was walking with my bag. I was getting tired. It didn't seem like my accommodation was looking anywhere near. And then I started thinking to myself, oh, this is too much. I'm going to faint, because I walked 9 minutes when I started complaining. And then I started calculating in my mind, okay, what am I going to do? And I seriously considered fainting, because it felt like such a long distance to me, walking 9 minutes with a shopping bag and not knowing how many more minutes I had to walk. And I was thinking in my mind, okay, there are cars driving by pretty quickly, but if I faint, maybe one car will stop, see me, and stop and call an ambulance, and then they'll take me to the hospital. But then I started thinking, how then will I find my way back? Wouldn't I have to walk back to my student accommodation? And you may be wondering, why didn't you just take an Uber? Well, I just moved to the UK. I think when I left Nigeria, Uber was not yet a thing. So I hadn't set up my account. I don't even think I had did I have a card, or I just had cash on me? I don't think I had a card yet. So I just hadn't set up my Uber, and it wasn't an option at that point. So my only option in my mind was to keep walking or faint. And then as I was thinking about it, considering and weighing my options, I saw my hostel, my student accommodation in sight. And I was like, yeah, no more fainting. I'm going to walk the remaining 3, 4, 5 minutes. And that was how I walked to my accommodation. And that was my first ever experience walking a long distance in the UK. It was such a culture shock. And then every time till now, when I'm walking and I see cars, and I'm just thinking, I can't wait to stop using my Legacy Benz and get a Mercedes Benz. And yeah, it was such a funny experience. But now I can walk 45 minutes comfortably, so I've accustomed to it. But that was one of my biggest culture shocks. The second one, this one is a very nice one. People holding the door for you when you're coming. So that's something that I noticed on campus, that when someone is at the door and you're walking behind them, even if you're maybe say if a couple of feet away, they will hold the door for you till you come. And I thought, oh, that's so cute, like that's really nice. That where I came from, people didn't hold the door for you. Like people would go about their business. You have a hand, you can open the door yourself. But that's something that I've picked up as well. So I hold the door for people as well, hold the elevators for people or whatever. And it's just a very nice, heartwarming gesture to me. Then the third one, calling lecturers by name. Now this was such a big shock to me. Where I come from, we don't call lecturers by their names. What do we call them? We call them with their title. So if you're a doctor or a professor, you have to say that and say the surname. Like woe betide you if you call a lecturer by their first name or their surname alone without the title. So how like I noticed this, I remember that I was in a tutorial, one of my very first tutorials or thereabout, and the tutorial was being conducted by my professor who taught the module. So tutorials, for those who may not know, are like small teaching groups where you get to answer questions, the tutor asks you questions, you answer, you read before you come, blah blah blah. So during the tutorial, one of these students was a Canadian student and wanted to ask the tutor a question, and then not only called her by her first name but by like her pet name. So you know how people have names, maybe say Stephanie and they shorten it to Steph. So she didn't say Professor Stephanie or Professor, her surname, maybe say Professor Stephanie Thompson. She said Steph. And then when she said it in the tutorial, like all the alarm bells in my head went off. I was waiting for a reaction. I was like, what has just happened? And so I was waiting for the professor to like have a negative reaction and say, how dare you call me by my name and sort of thing. And so like literally I stopped. This was how I was, waiting for the ball to drop. No ball dropped. Lecture continued, tutorial continued as normal. She answered the question and we kept discussing. And I thought to myself, rah, like so here, like you can call your lecturers by their first name, and many of them insist, like say, oh yeah, call me by my first name. I guess so, but yeah, it's just you just do it. You don't think about it. You just do it. So that's still it. Till today, that's a culture shock for me. Like for my professors till now, I still try to say professor and surname, especially in emails. But maybe if I've gotten sort of used to you, maybe we've interacted before, after a couple more times, I may be more inclined to call you by your first name, but I still feel some type of way till today. So yeah, that's another culture shock that I've experienced is people leaving class once the lecture is supposed to be over. So the lecture runs for maybe say in a pre-pandemic world or post-pandemic world, it would run for 15 minutes. So you get 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes of the hour to go to your next class or to leave so the other people that are using the hall will come in. And I remember my very first class that I attended, and so during my very first class or before the class, I met a girl and we were just talking, and then class started. And then 15 minutes into the class time, I start hearing shuffling of feet. And immediately I panic, like, when people are shuffling. And I panicked immediately. And I looked around and, no one seemed panicked like I was. And I was wondering, what's happening? Is there like a rat in this place or a snake in this place? Should I get up and start running? And the lecturer just continued teaching. Then I turned to the girl that I had met before class started. And I asked her, please, what's going on? Why are people shuffling around? And she's like, oh, class is supposed to be over now. People are packing their things to leave. And I was like, what? The lecturer is still teaching. Lecturer is still speaking. And people are packing their things to leave. Such disrespect. And some people, after they finish packing, some people get up and start going. I was dazed. Because where I come from, you don't do that. Where I come from, when lectures are going on, even if the lecturer runs 2 hours after, you're going to sit your butt down on that chair and you're going to listen. And then to see people leaving on the clock, to say I was shocked would be an understatement. It was such a funny moment. And then I calmed down, I stopped panicking. I was like, okay, there's no rat in this place, there's no snake in this place. And then I listened to the lecturer, or tried to listen to the lecturer while people were shuffling away. So yeah, and similar to that, it's just how casually people walk in and out of class. that one was a shock to me. Like 10-15 minutes into class, you see people walking in, and then they'll have like ID cards of like 5-10 people, and they'll swipe it in. You don't do that where I came from, or where I come from. They don't do that. It was such a shock. And then people just, if you don't have to take excuse before you leave the class, like you can leave to the bathroom, or you can carry your bag and leave the class when you don't want to stay anymore, and no one's going to be like, oh, where are you going? I thought that was really strange. It was a very culture shock moment for me. But you know what, I sort of like, settle down into that style. So sometimes I would walk out of class if I had to go somewhere else, or when I come in late because I have to walk 14 minutes distance my second year, I would walk into class confidently, casually, like nothing happened, because no one was going to stop me. Disclaimer again, that is not an indication of my time management skills. So the next one I would say is lecturers and people being like very polite with feedback. And that's something like I've noticed in the British culture, like they can be polite to your face sort of thing. And so I noticed that as well. So maybe for instance, we're in tutorial and someone is saying something that is blatantly wrong, like that doesn't make any sense. The tutor or the lecturer would not say, oh no, that's wrong, shut up. Like they wouldn't, like the way they would talk to you back in Nigeria and say they wouldn't say you're saying rubbish, but like they would tell you straight up that this is wrong, or like, yeah, it's okay, or they'll just shut you up and move to the next person. But in here in the UK and in tutorials, I noticed that if you're saying something that's not maybe spot on, it's not accurate or factually correct or legally correct or whatever, the lecturer will say like, that's interesting, that's an interesting point, and then they go on to say the thing that's correct. And I thought to myself, oh my days, what? So whenever like I was speaking and they say, oh, that's interesting, I wouldn't be sure if it was interesting because it's a new point of view, or because it's just wrong. Or like when just people spoke, you would have to like listen to see what the lecturer would say after. Maybe they will say the correct answer, because they won't tell you it's wrong straight up. They'll say that's interesting. That's like the most popular line I know that people say when what you said is wrong. So yeah, that was very very shocking for me to see as well, that they do that. Very positive feedback, but it's also a very good thing because it's sensitive to people's emotions, mental health. Like you just don't go around shutting people up, and just being polite and being very kind. So yeah, that is another thing that I noticed as well. Another culture shock moment I had when I first moved to the UK. And finally, another one that I will say is how lonely it can get. I don't think anyone tells you how lonely it can get in another country, or just the way of life that is here. Maybe I'm not a very friendly person, but there's a lot of individuality. So you have your own space, you have your own accommodation space. Maybe you share with other people, but you typically have your own room. You're almost by yourself. My nearest friend when I was in my first year at Leicester, my nearest friend was about 5 minutes away, so I would have to leave my house and walk 5 minutes distance. So sometimes it can get lonely, especially if you've moved here from abroad. So that can be very shocking. Like I don't think people expect to come and be shocked at how lonely it can get. Lucky you if you came with friends, or people when you first arrived, it's easier. But if maybe say you resume late, or you didn't come with anybody, you didn't know anyone, you just moved all by yourself, it can be a bit lonely at first. But after a while, I believe like you just adjust to the way of living here. And of course you make friends and you can go and visit your friends and whatnot in a post-pandemic world. But yeah, those are all some of my culture shock moments that I can share at this point. If I think about another one, maybe I'll do another video. Please let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you like the stories I told, if this is type of videos you would like to see, or what other type of videos, or which other type of videos rather you would like to see on this channel. And of course, you know what to do. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Please do share with your friends and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next. Bye.